All right. So what should we draw today? I haven't figured out exactly, but I like improvising. I like going with the flow. So I figured like, oh, hop on stream and then we'll decide something to draw. All right. I kind of realized why I had this higher last time. It could be anything. I mean, I'm down to do like campaign stuff. I know we did Callian yesterday just because Jordan was here and he was the only one in chat when I started, so we were just talking, and I was like, I mean, I have you here, so I'll just. What if we did some Callian? I'll just draw like a new pose for Callian, and he was like, hell yeah! So we started doing that. Um, Looking back on the sketch from yesterday, I really liked the pencil sketch, and then when I started inking it, like I don't like how it turned out. So we're definitely gonna revisit that Callian and do like another one at some point. But I think for tonight we'll do something different. Just to you know keep it interesting. But I think maybe later this week I'm gonna redo that same pose because I really like how the pose turned out, and I like how the the vibe of it turned out, but I just don't like the inking and the shading that I did. And I think I think the main thing is that I think I could do better. So I think that's why I wanted that one again because I think there was a lot of potential. So, but I think tonight we could do something different. I think we'll do some Sarek tonight because you're here. Um, you're the boy, the man, the myth, the legend. Um, I'm gonna get warmed up. I want to draw so a few things. I don't know if I'm gonna do like I don't know if I'm gonna do Sarek as he is currently with all his armor. I think it would kind of be fun to do Sarek like without armor or like Sarek like before like he yeah yeah some of the weapons would be cool. Let's pen out of the way a little bit. Adjust the camera a little bit because I kind of want to be able to angle differently. All right, let's do something here. I think yeah. I was thinking like I think a cool thing to do would maybe be like Sarek like either in his exile or maybe like when he was still with his clan, which probably wouldn't be too different in terms of like the clothing and stuff. But I think something like that could be cool just to get like more like druidic sort of version. So what am I thinking here for that then? I mean, so like when it comes to like druids and rangers and stuff like that, like in fantasy, I've never been like a huge fan of like I think D&D does this a lot and like other games like Diablo and stuff do this thing where like the the visual cue that someone's a druid is that they're wearing like untanned like shredded up fur that looks like they literally just ripped it off of like the back of like a bear or something. And they're wearing like all hides and like have like literal leaves and like vegetation growing on them and stuff. And I think to me that's just like a little too like gimmicky. Like when it comes to like druids and like druidic clans and stuff like that, I like a more like reserved style personally. So I think definitely you still have some fur and stuff like that. And if you're a very, very powerful magic user, like you could have some like cool like vegetation or something growing on you. But like I don't really I'm not a huge fan of like druids being depicted as like absolute savages that have like no like semblance of like order or civilization at all. And they're just like scrounging by to live. Um Love, that's the exact image. I love that's the exact image I have because of media lol. Even Baldur's Gate 3 can be gimmick grids. I mean, like I'm not saying like to throw it away completely and to be like, there's nothing cool here. I just think that a lot of times they go overboard with it. Like I think having like vegetation or like symbols of vegetation is cool and stuff like that. But um like when they're like just like like they look like these savages who like aren't wearing normal clothes like like it looks like they don't know how to like they don't know they're not like civilized enough to like tan their own leather or like weave their own cloth because like everything's just made from like raw materials I think that's a little ridiculous like to me like I think and of course, you know me. I love to take inspiration from like real world uh sources when it comes to fantasy, like historical sources, ancient and medieval like sources and stuff like that. And like we know that like druids were like uh like an actual priest caste of Celts, like the Gauls and the Britons and stuff, and like druids, or like the Celts and other barbarian tribes in the eyes of Rome were like uncivilized because they weren't part of Rome, but they still like were very like intelligent and like advanced and they knew how to like work metal and weave textiles and stuff like that. It's just that they lived closer to nature, like they didn't live in like big cities and stuff like that. um and so what my point is that like I think you could still have like a druid that has like a cool like robe that like has a cool pattern on it, right? Like cool like embroidery and stuff like that and looks like it's well made and not just like tattered and like disgusting all the time. And I think like when it comes to like Firbolgs, right? Like we have like these like this fantasy race of beings who are descended from giants, giant ancestry, and they live extremely close to nature in the forest, but and they hide themselves in magic, right? But they have a strong sense of honor. They have a code. They have laws. Like laws are very important to like Firbolgs and stuff like that. So like I don't think that like the Firbolgs would just be wearing like tattered, dirty, like untanned leather and stuff like that. Like I think there'd definitely be leather. I think there'd definitely be fur and stuff like that. But like it doesn't have to look ragged. I think. Now when Sarek goes into exile, I think that's a different story, right? Because like not having a community to like rely on and not having like all the skills necessary like to maintain like all those different things, then yeah, maybe his clothes in Exile are like more ragged and like hello, welcome, welcome. I hope you're doing well. We're discussing some topics and some ideas for drawing right now. I'm gonna draw some fantasy stuff, and we're discussing what could be a direction for whatever it is we're gonna draw. So I think tonight we're gonna do a few things. I'm gonna get started on some stuff right now. Like, yeah, I know that. I know who that is. I definitely know who that is. Um, but yeah, I think when Derek goes into exile, I think maybe his clothes are like a little bit more ragged and stuff. But I think we could have like some tunics, right? Like I think we could have some nice tunics with some embroidery. I think we could have like maybe like some vestments. Like I think we could have maybe like a cloak or like some sort of covering. But then again, I kind of imagine like maybe being so attuned to life in the forest, like maybe Firbolgs don't really need cloaks or like heavy garments because they're so adept to like the temperance and like the temperature of the forest. They don't really need to wear like heavy cloaks and stuff. And the Neverwinter Wood doesn't really get cold either. Like it's pretty warm like for most of the year. So maybe you don't need like a heavy cloak for like a early version of Sarek. But I have some ideas of what we could do. So actually I was thinking of doing some equipment, but I'm actually thinking of getting into a pose and starting with a character actually. So I changed my mind on that. Maybe we do Sarek. I like the idea of Sarek in his exile. So we'll do that. No. Um I'm just, just chilling, just trying to be an authentic YouTuber and streamer, and he is just in the actual chat, just chatting with me, like a real subscriber. Okay. Yeah, so I've streamed on Twitch once a few days ago, and I just did a unboxing of a Lorewyn Eclipsed booster box. So we just basically like open packs for Magic on the first stream on Twitch, and then 2 days ago I did my first YouTube stream, and we did fantasy drawing, and Jordan was here, so I ended up drawing Jordan's character Callian on stream, and it went really well until I started inking it, and I didn't like how the ink went, but Overall, it was a great stream though. Um, everyone that was here said it was really, really good. We gotta give Sarek like really big shoulders. He's huge. Um, oh, maybe that's a little too much. Okay, so I think I like the idea for this one, maybe of yeah. So this is kind of turned already. That's fine. We're getting into it. Um, I kind of like the idea of him. Okay, yeah. Probably be easier if I did. Actually, that's probably fine. I kind of want him for like when it comes to drawing, like I feel like if you draw a character like often, and if you've drawn them multiple times, like it's you know how to like the form and like the outline, the silhouette becomes more muscle memory, and then you can like really just get into like figuring out like what you want to do with the posing, do all like interesting things. Like I was thinking like, oh, I'm gonna have him holding like a walking stick. Like I feel like, if he like during his exile, I could see him like maybe uh like using like a walking stick as he like explores the realm in the forest and stuff. And then I was thinking like I was thinking like I want to have something interesting in his other hand too. Like I don't want to just have I don't want to just have his hand hanging because I think you could do something interesting in his other hand. But then I was thinking, like, you know what? Maybe I should just get more comfortable, like drawing Sarek, and maybe it's fine just to have his hand. That's the thing too, is sometimes your posing can be very stiff, or at least my like, if you're not used to drawing characters like. Yeah, I'm just thinking like that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, like I should have him doing something else in his other hand just to make it more interesting. Um, and then I was like, maybe I should just Maybe I should just focus on getting the details of his form down. I feel like Firbolgs usually are depicted with bigger heads because I feel like he's looking very Goliath like this. Um, but I'm gonna run with it for now and just see where it goes. I have stepping out a little bit, I think. He's so big that his foot's going off the edge of the paper already, but that's all. That's fine. You can't even see it with the camera down there. We're just gonna kind of try to rough this out. Let me check something. My Okay. Yeah, so it looks like you two are the only people here right now, which is totally cool. But just for in case that anyone else is watching, so basically we're drawing a character and he is a Firbolg, which is a fantasy creature from Dungeons and Dragons, and it's essentially like a woodland giant, like a 8 foot tall, large sort of giant kin that is very in tune with nature, and they live in like the deep recesses of forests, and they tend to be very communal. And they also have like very strict laws and a code of honor that they abide by. Um, they prefer to remain like hidden and don't really like to engage with outsiders too much. And they tend to be fairly good natured and helpful unless people disrespect nature or they're get too close to their homes without their then they can be very fierce and dangerous. Um and they can, depending on, the different, clans or whatever or whatnot. Um some are more lenient and some are pretty strict, but uh they tend to be like hunter gatherers, living like off of the forest, never taking more than they need, um, trying to maintain balance in their forests and stuff like that. Um, and they tend to either be fierce warriors who use weapons like large greatswords, stuff like that, or powerful magic users, like druids and like rangers who can like tap into like the deep magic that lies hidden within like the woods, the forest. So typically you have like Firbolg warriors, Firbolg druids. Usually each clan is like headed by a druid who serves as like a spiritual leader as well as like a village elder, stuff like that. So pretty good. I'm gonna lighten this up a little bit. I think his foot's a little too. That's a little. That's better. It's getting out. So that tends to be the sort of it tends to be the majority of Furbolgs, like the stereotypical Furbolg. This character here is a very unique like situation for a Firbolg because he was banished from his clan. And for Firbolgs, they're very, 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 very big on like their clan identity, and everything that they do is for the clan first and for the individual second. So dishonoring your clan or doing anything to put your clan in jeopardy are like very grievous sins amongst Firbolg. And Sarek, this character, yeah, so Sarek, this character, very much values his people's traditions, and he did not uh he did not like break the rules willingly or like on purpose necessarily. He was like in a very intense situation, filled with danger, and he was forced to act quickly and make a decision in the heat of the moment. And ultimately, it didn't really, unfortunately, save like save anyone like particularly. Maybe it saved himself, but who's this handsome hunk of lore? So this is a character called Sarek. Yes. Hey, welcome in. Yeah, I do DM. And right now we are drawing one of my players' characters, D&D characters, yeah. So we were just talking about some of the background and like lore for the character, which he's so big that he's kind of like coming off screen a little bit. Um, maybe I can adjust the camera a little bit, but Yeah, this is D&D character. His name is Sarek, and he is a Firbolg, which is a type of fantasy creature from Dungeons and Dragons. Essentially, the TLDR is like a woodland giant, like a protector of the forest. They have, you know, giant ancestry. They're like 8 feet tall, um, broad shouldered. They tend to be, you know, like either furry or just cut like very hairy, depending on the different like kind of types or versions. Everyone kind of takes D&D type characters and sort of like customize them and does their own thing with it. But they live like deep within like recesses of like enchanted forests. Okay, cool. Yeah, Daggerheart's rad. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but I am a critter myself. I watch Critical Role. I'm behind on the current campaign, but other than the current campaign, I've seen all everything they've put out. Um, oh, don't be scared. Don't. There's nothing to be scared about. Like it's intimidating just because there's so many rules. And there, I feel like D&D has like a large like zeitgeist. Like everyone who plays kind of like knows so much about like the lore and like the rules and stuff, but like none of that really matters. Um, what matters is just having fun, and I think the best way to enjoy it, to get more confident with it, is just to do it. Just to jump in, like just find some people to play with. It sounds like you have friends to play with if you've played Daggerheart, right? So I wouldn't worry about like the specifics too much. The very first time I played D&D, we were rolling our hit dice instead of a d20 to attack with, because we were like, oh, we roll to hit, right? So we roll our hit die. So I was playing like a fighter, so I was rolling like a d10 to hit. And we were doing it so wrong. And we were in high school. We didn't even have a player's handbook. We were using like a starter kit. But none of us really knew what we were doing. But yet we had so much fun. It was insanely fun, and then we learned as we went, right? Um, so just like jump into it, and you can always like if you're gonna run a game too. It sounds like you might try running. My advice there is just to be upfront about it too. Like if you don't know like what to do, like if you're like if something comes up in the game and oh hey Jesus, long time no see. That's dude. How are you doing? Yeah, that's dope, dude. Um, I, like the whole thing with like playing and all that shit it's just about like having fun. Like you can get all the rules wrong, right? But like, you know, it's more about just like what you want to do with it. Like whenever I run a game or like if I'm playing in a game, like you can always just, like if I'm DMing and like a situation happens that I'm not prepared for, like normally I'll make up like a rule. I'll just be like, oh, just roll this, right? Just like, look at like the list of skills and just have them roll like a skill or whatever. Or if it's like really stumping you for a moment, you can just like always be like, hey, well, I'm gonna think about what to do here. Like, let's take like a break. Let's take like a 10-minute break. I'm gonna like look something up online or like look something up in the rule book real quick, and we'll get back into it or whatever. Like you could always like it's not like it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be like this thing where you're putting yourself like on blast and like you're like it is performative, but like it doesn't have to be like a stressful thing. Like at the end of the day, it's like still hanging out with your friends and having a good time. Um, but yeah, so this is one of my friend's characters. He was in chat, so like we were just deciding what we wanted to draw today, and he was one of my first viewers. So I was like, oh, I'll draw your character. I've drawn him before, in a different sort of like pose and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, we'll try something new. We'll do his character. Um, and he's like I said, he's a Firbolg, which is not one of like your not one of your like your typical, uh D&D creatures, right? Because normally you have like dwarves and elves and stuff like that. But it's essentially like a woodland giant, like I said earlier. Like they tend to like chill like deep within like enchanted forests. They're 8 foot tall, like kind of like big hairy um giants. They can be kind of like pretty friendly, but they're pretty reclusive and they like to just be like do their own thing usually. Yeah. Um and but they take like living in balance with nature like very seriously. So if people are like not if they're coming into like the forest and they're not like respecting like the balance of nature and stuff like that, that's one way you can piss off a furbolg. um Generally they try to help you if you're lost or something, but they'll tell you to get on your way. um and so this character is sort of an interesting one because he grew up and sort of like lived in a clan of Firbolgs, uh, who typically they're very serious about like their clan and like their clan based society. They take, you know um typically, your actions should be for the benefit of the clan first, and for the benefit of the individual like second. So they tend to do that. And even though they're sort of these hunter gatherers, and they tend to like be very reclused in the depths of the forest, they still they actually like value honor and like their own code of like laws and rules like very very like more than anything. And so if you break the rules of the clan, uh there's some very bad consequences that can come from that. And so this character is really interesting because he took his clan very seriously, and he, you know, was set to be a very important member of his clan. Like his father was like the elder of the clan, and he was like on his way training to be, you know, potentially like a very important member, if not like the one of the leaders of the clan one day. And I heard you have a tabaxi in your campaign that has tons of aura. Yeah, whether that's good aura or bad aura is another conversation, but yeah, definitely. Um And so this character, Stench Aura, yeah. He I'm not sure if I like that. I might go over that again. Um, so he took all this very seriously. He was meant to be um not just like a member of this clan, but potentially a leader. And he was in a very difficult situation, uh, where his clan was under attack. He was faced with a difficult decision, and he ended up in a moment of desperation trying to save some of the members of the clan from dying. He broke one of the rules of his clan, and so was banished. Even though he had good intentions, um, the sort of laws, the code of honor, that those sorts of things were super important. So important that even the son of the chief, the head druid, was banished. Right? Hmm. Makes him look a little too high. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to change those eyelids a little bit. You can't really, I might not be able to see that super clearly on the camera because it's very small detail, but I try not to erase, especially when I'm like first doing my first sort of designs. But every once in a while I'll have to go a little bit if I do something that I really don't like. And like I like how the face is coming along. I like how the shape of it is coming along with like the beard and the hair and everything. Um I might fix that strand on the right a little bit, but looks a little off. I'm still getting used to keeping the conversation going for the sake of streaming, and then also focusing on drawing at the same time, which I can do, but every once in a while I'll like have to stop to try to remember my train of thought. And so yeah. So thanks. Thanks. Mine's getting quite long. I've been just letting it go lately. And I've been growing it out. I think I'm gonna trim it. I'm gonna taper it in a little bit though. Oh, sorry. Hit the camera. I'm gonna taper it in a little bit though. Like it's getting kind of Kind of too big. Why can't my attacks just be survival checks and then I'd never miss? Yeah, so Noah, my friend who plays this character, is notorious for rolling very, very bad. And so he misses a lot, unfortunately. Um, so these Firbolgs, even though they are like hunter gatherers and they live like very close to nature and all that, they still are. They're still have that sense of honor and that sense of like law, right? They have like very strong sense of community and all that. So they're not like they're very civilized, but just they're so traditional at the same time. So we're gonna give him a. That's usually what he is rocking, but I'm making his bun like more messy, because this is him while he's in exile, because he was banished for using. Yeah, I don't want to get too. I don't want to get too. I don't want to get too. I don't want to. Sorry, I don't want to get too crazy with like the amount of line work I'm putting in. Because I don't want to get too messy. And with hair, I'm trying to get better at leaving areas like in the middle to like leave that highlight for like where the light would be shining on it. So I'm trying to leave more space. I tend to want to, just like line in like a ton of the hair, but I'm gonna try to leave more of it open for now. So maybe I just kind of like put some line there. So we got the tip of his ear here. We're gonna do a little bit. Yeah, that. Little bit more depth here and at the bottom as well, I think. Yeah, so this guy's a very interesting character, which is what I was sort of coming around to earlier, because his people, that needs. Nope, no, I made his eyes too close. His eyes smaller. Um, so like living so secluded in the forest and then also having these very like these very strict rules, and then also this character was like totally cool with it. Like he was all on board. Like he was like he respected the rules. He was in line to become like the head druid, um, one of the elders on the council and all that. And then he was banished because the rule that he broke was essentially to never use or wear metal, essentially. His clan has like a very strict aversion to metal. And the reason why he broke that rule was because his magic at the time wasn't strong enough to protect the people around him. And so there was a weapon, a spear, that was within reach, and he took that up to try to save someone that he cared about, which ultimately failed, which is sort of the tragedy of it, because he was still banished for breaking that rule. Even though he had good intentions, the clan is very strict, and they don't really budge on those rules. And there's a good reason for why they wouldn't budge on that rule, which is getting into potentially some spoiler-ish territory for those of my players who might be in the chat. So we'll leave it at that when it comes to those types of things. Um, it's coming along. It's coming along. So in response to what happened, he was exiled from the clan, and so he spent quite a long time just like surviving by himself in the woods. These types of creatures, these Firbolgs, are very like they live their whole lives in forests. Um, but having the clan be such like a important part of his life, it was a big deal. Having to travel alone as well for so long, and this sort of version of the character that I'm drawing is before our story in the campaign actually starts. This is him in exile, like wandering the forest by himself, essentially. So, um, once the story starts and he meets the other characters and he becomes, a hero, he's much more clean cut. Because he eventually finds like a human settlement and then begins to integrate into like a human society. Um, but I imagine like especially during his exile, like in that time before he started living amongst like men and people, humans. Um, I think he has like a little bit of a more wild, like untamed look. So I wanted to make his beard a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more unkept on the edges, a little bit more wild looking, and then his hair, he has like this bun, and it's like usually very like streamlined. It's very like well kept, and so in his exile, I wanted to have like a little bit more of his strands coming out and stuff like that. I think I'm gonna put. He's so big. I want to make his eyes small-ish because at this point he's been through a lot and he's experienced and wizened. So I don't want to have big old eyes because big old eyes make them look cute typically and make them look kind of naive. So I definitely don't want like really big eyes on him. I'm trying to make his eyes small. It's a little difficult because the camera is like right in front of my face. There we go. That's looking a lot better now. I'm gonna give him some creases on his forehead too. He's not extremely old. He here in this image is probably somewhere between 100 and 150 years old, which Firbolgs live up to like 500 years. So he's like probably like in his prime, like physical prime here. But I'll give him like a little bit of forehead wrinkle just because like he's seen some shit and he's weathered a little bit, like from surviving in the forest by himself and all that. So that's looking pretty good. I like how that's turning out. I like kind of how his hair is turning out too. I think I'm gonna put a little bit more. I think too, I'm also just gonna kind of have like a little bit. Yeah, yeah, that's pretty good. And then why don't we throw in like a little bit over here too? I like to think Sarek's hair is like usually it looks very like straight because he like slicks it back like before he puts it like he ties it up. But I like to think like naturally it's a little bit more curly, which you don't really see currently in the story as much. And I think the humidity of the Neverwinter wood would really bring out the curls too if we're gonna get into the nitty gritty of it. Because the forest that he is surviving in and wandering around in has this constant, pervasive, hot mist and fog that rises and sort of kind of perpetually shrouds this deep enchanted forest that he lives in. And so I think like just being in that humidity and stuff, I wanted to give it definitely a little bit more of that kind of wild look, the curls and stuff like that. Um, yeah, thank you. I love how this is turning out. See, I can compare it to one of the other drawings I have in a little bit. I want to make a little bit more progress first, but I'll compare it to the other drawing, and I think you can kind of see in this one, like it still hopefully is gonna look like the same character, but you can see like that it definitely looks different. Like he definitely looks in like more unkept here. Um, yeah, there you go. That's a pretty good close up, I think, of the progress so far. I'm really liking how the style is coming through in this one because I've been working on trying to develop my own sort of style where you look at it and there's like it's not like I'm not trying to draw like super like realistic, so to speak. I want it to have kind of like a graphic kind of style to it, like something you would see in like a comic book or um graphic novel or something. And it's like kind of hard to develop like a very distinct style, but I think it's starting to come through here. It's not super clean right now. It's kind of messy, but I kind of like that. And like the rest of his body is very roughed in. So like this arm's probably a little too big. So I'm definitely gonna like clean this up as I go, as I'm like adding detail stuff like that. But oh, and then there I go, hitting the camera again. Yeah, I think um for this character, right, Sarek, he values tradition and like and following rules so heavily that I feel like being banished from his clan for breaking the rules would weigh heavily on him. Even though like he would eventually have to grapple and realize that what he did was ultimately the choice that he made and the choice that he's going to have to live with. And I think eventually he's going to have to realize that like I'm going to have to be okay with that, right? But I think especially in his early years of exile, I think that choice would probably have weighed heavily on him. And I think here it's weighing heavily on him, right? So like but no, he still has a determined look in his face, I think though. He does definitely look tired and he definitely does look disheveled for sure. But I think he's definitely doesn't have like the look of someone who's given up either. You know what I mean? Like I think he's definitely still on a path and he's just trying to figure out like what it is he needs to do, right? Because now I think what's important for him is that he is a man of purpose at the end of the day. Like he wants to have a purpose. He wants to find his purpose. Right? And I think that's coming through pretty nicely. So I'm actually really enjoying how this is turning out. Doing really. Uh, so I'm gonna clean this up a little bit. So I want to give sort of gonna come in from the elbow a little bit more. Oh, that's a little too exaggerated. I think he needs thicker wrists probably. Alright. Yeah, that's better. Now that's a forearm right there. Heel of his hand. A little bit more there. Yeah, so we just gotta get used to cleaning things up as we get further into the piece. I actually like how the proportions are turning out now. Earlier on, I thought his head was a little too small. Because I wanted him to look big because he's like 8 feet tall, right? So I definitely want the body proportions to be a little different. So I wanted to, have him have really big shoulders, big hands, and big feet, right? But then the head was so small, it was looking sort of Hulk-ish, and then I was like, oh, that's like maybe not the right move. But as I filled in the details of the head, now the proportions are looking quite right. Because you can imagine like a regular person, their head probably comes up like around here, maybe yeah, like here to here ish. And I could kind of see this being like, I'm gonna give him a bigger back too. Hope everyone's having a good night. Tuesday. Hope everyone's having a good work week so far. I'm just gonna kind of sketch this in a little bit just so I can kind of like gauge for my own sort of eye, like where the chest is coming. He's gonna be wearing a shirt, but for the moment, I kind of just want to figure out like where the the highlights are gonna be and like where like the raised portions are gonna be. So I'm gonna kind of block that in. Let's see. Yeah. And then this obviously is not. This is gonna be behind. That's where his tricep would be. This is gonna come out a little bit more, and then S somewhere like because he is very strong too. He's very wise and very strong. Those are his two like highest stats, and he's tough too. Constitution also a good one for. But he's big. He's strong. Um, so definitely want that chest to come through and look. I definitely, yeah, that's looking better. Kind of also, I think I'm gonna go kind of exaggerated on this piece a little bit, because like I know he's not like a barbarian, like he's not like Conan or something, but just for fun, I kind of want to highlight that like, yeah, he actually is big and he's strong, so I'm gonna actually give him like some pretty big, which might not be super accurate necessarily, like, because I think I'm gonna give him some massive triceps this time. Shoulders too. Pop out more. I actually like how that shoulder turned out. Like from the side there, it looks. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like I tend, yeah, okay, that I like those proportions. Those proportions are looking really. Um, but I tend to when I like want to block things in and when I'm like sketching before I'm like really drawing, I like to like I usually use hard angles for things, which is just like my own personal preference, I think. I know some people use a lot of like very curved lines. I tend to really like to use like jagged line, like more like triangle like type shapes and sort of like scratchy kind of like angles. I do use curved like lines for blocking stuff out too, but I just tend to gravitate more towards kind of like angled, and that just works for me. And then like when I go in and do details and stuff, obviously I'm gonna smooth stuff out and have it a little less jagged. But I think if we're talking about like a style that I have, I think it definitely is like kind of like a more like angular style. Like it's definitely like a little bit more jagged of a style, and I kind of like that. That's kind of what I'm going for. So normally this, and then we're not gonna get into the nitty gritty of the leg too much, but I do want his legs to be a little, because he is so big. Walking in the forest and climbing up like the hills and mountains, like within the deep reaches of the woods and shit. Some pretty good quads. I think it's also kind of just fun to do like that kind of superhero kind of look for like strong characters as well. I think I'm gonna taper in his lats a little bit. to make it look a little bit more exaggerated. And also it kind of like cleans it up a little bit too. You can kind of like read it, kind of opens up the readability a little bit more deeper than like that. Now he looks super jacked. Um, yeah, that's looking pretty good. Okay. I'm really liking the shape of this. The shape is looking a lot better. Um, I'm gonna fix the walking stick a little bit though, I think. And I might add some things to the walking stick too. I feel like coming from a tribe that is led by druids, um, you know, having magic that comes from deep within like the enchanted woods and stuff. Like different types of plants and herbs are definitely gonna have like spiritual significance and like medicinal value, symbolic nature, stuff like that. But I think like having something hanging from the walking stick would be cool too. Maybe like some feathers or like some mistletoe or something. I think we'll go in and do that later, or I could do it now. I'm gonna kind of give that like a little bit of a. So, hey, what's up? Welcome in. We are drawing Sarek during his exile right now. So this is going to be Noah's character in our D&D campaign before the campaign started. So this is part of his backstory. He goes on to become a cleric in our campaign. Once he like integrates in with human society. But to become a cleric of Tyr and to like eventually come into the fold of the campaign, his banishment from his own clan is what leads to that. And so and so he goes through a period of banishment and exile. So this is I thought it'd be fun to get a look at like a different look at this character. I mentioned it before, but I've drawn this character before. And so since Noah was since Noah was in the chat and he was my first viewer tonight and I was deciding on what I wanted to draw for tonight, we were talking about, what we could do and I said, "Well, what about maybe we could do something with Sarek?" And I thought we could do like Sarek with all his armor and his weapons and stuff, but I was like, what if we did something different? What if we drew Sarek with like during his exile, like a little bit more rustic or a lot more rustic, a lot less clean cut. So we're doing him in his banishment. So this is gonna be him wandering and surviving within the Neverwinter Wood for like 50-ish years. And I feel like this is somewhere in the middle. I don't know. Thank you. Jesus was in here. Jesus was in here and he said hi and he said that you tagged me and that's how he knew that I was streaming today. So I really appreciate that. That's actually very very goated. And it was also really cool to see him and say hi. I don't know if he's still here. He hasn't said anything in a while. No, he's not an op. He's not an op. He's an OG. He's a good friend. And before he was a friend, he was a marching instructor for me and Rob and some of our friends in high school. So he's an OG, and he's legit because he also was a low brass player. No, no, the twin. So yeah, the twin. Yeah, he was quite literally like, "Hey, yo, Gavin, it's Jesus the twin from band," and I was like, "Okay, I know exactly who you are." Um, and he was like, "Yeah, Robert tagged you," and so no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's not an op. He's dope. And so he was in here, and yeah, no, he said hi. I think he just like like hopped in just to like say hi and like support, and I think he hopped out, which is totally cool. And he was asking some question. He actually mentioned that he was like gonna get into playing D&D too, and I was like, oh hell yeah, dude. Um, but yeah, I just want to do another little close up on the face because I'm really liking how the face is coming today. We got it has a lot of good style to it. I want to close in on that for a sec. But as you can see, like for anyone who's familiar with our D&D campaign, and hopefully more people will be familiar with it because I think we're gonna make some more content surrounding that on this channel. So that'll be really cool. But for anyone who's not, and if there anyone else in the chat, this character is very um he's very normally he's very like orderly and well kept and and stuff like that, but since this is him during his exile and his banishment, we definitely wanted to give him a more rustic look, but we wanted to make it look like the same character, right? Because it'd be tricky to draw a character in such different styles, so not different styles but different, like if you draw a character in the same clothes with the same equipment like over and over and over again, it becomes very easy, or at least easier. But then to switch it up and draw the same character with like a different hairstyle or different clothes, like I still struggle with that. Like I'm not the greatest artist ever yet, so I'm practicing and trying to get better. And so like yeah, I definitely wanted to like see if we could make it look like Sarek, but in a totally different era. So, instead of being very clean and orderly, trimmed beard, nice and tapered, and then having that long hair in the bun, but like having it like more slicked back, I feel, and like more like all the hair is like kept in more orderly. And then in here, it's like, it's different. It's like, he's got like quite a bit more wild beard, and his hair is also kind of falling out of the bun, and it has a lot more texture. It's like much more curly and stuff like that. And I feel like you can definitely see that he's in a different era of his life. So it's coming along nicely. I really like the I think I gave him too many there in his face. But definitely want to give him a little bit more. Kind of messed that up a little bit too. I'm trying not to like nitpick too much because I mentioned this on my last stream, which was 2 days ago, I think. Um, One problem that I run into as an artist is I tend to want to uh spend too long on like one area or erase too much. And like when you have momentum, you don't want to lose that momentum like even in a drawing. Like you can have momentum as you're like making progress and you want to keep that momentum going. You don't want to keep restarting on the same area over and over because then you're going to lose the vision that you have in your mind's eye for like the rest of the piece. So if you don't like an area, you can come back to it later. And that's what I'm trying to do more is instead of getting too focused on one area, just let it be and then come back to it. That's what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying not to erase as much. I'm trying to like keep the flow going in other areas and stuff like that and keep working on it. And especially when I only have like the silhouette like and the outline like kind of blocked out, I want to be making more progress. Like I should be like really putting on the clothes and stuff already rather than like messing around with like the outlines because a lot of these outlines you won't even see them. They're literally just here at this point for my own reference, so I know like what the shape of his body is. But when I come in and put the clothes on him, like I'm not gonna be able to like I'm gonna have to like the clothes are gonna have a different outline than the muscles, so I really shouldn't be spending this much time. So that's what I'm trying to get better at. Are you getting better? You are you getting used to drawing with the camera on your hands? I am, but it does take some getting used to for sure. Because I keep bumping the camera a little bit, nothing too crazy. But it's a little weird, especially because normally when I draw, I hunch over it quite a bit. Um, because in an ideal world, I would have like a drawing desk or like a topper for my desk that has an angle because you want to be drawing at an angle. Because if you're not drawing an angle, then you have to hunch over it, really. And that's what I normally do is I normally hunch over. But I can't because the camera's right. So it's I am pleasantly surprised with how well the face is turning out and like other aspects of this is turning out, considering the fact that I'm uncomfortable. Because I usually don't draw like this. So it's actually going very well because I would expect that the drawing wouldn't be as good as it is based on how I'm feeling at the desk right now. So it's actually going well. So I kind of got a vision of like what kind of clothing Sarah think because like I said, I don't think he's gonna be wearing like winter clothes or anything that's like um too heavy because the forest that he lives in and sort of spent his exile in is supernaturally sort of heated, or at least the river is like there's constantly this warm mist and fog that's like rising from the river within the forest, and so the forest is constantly shrouded by mist, which makes it very humid and very warm throughout the year, so it doesn't really get very cold in the forest even in winter. And for anyone who's familiar with if there's anyone in chat who I'm not familiar. Um, it's the Neverwinter Wood. It's the forest right next to Neverwinter, hence the name Neverwinter, right? Because it never really gets super cold during winter there, even though it should, because it's very far north. So it should be cold. but there's something that's like causing that mist just to rise because the water is just so warm all year round, and definitely has a strong effect on the forest. And so I don't so for someone who lives in the forest and for Sarek who's banished, I don't think he needs like anything super heavy to wear. If anything, I think he'd want something breathable because it's so humid in here all the time. So I kind of got an idea for like some sort of like loose fitting, like like a kind of like a loose fitting tunic, and then maybe having like a cool like long vest or something like that, like kind of draping down tucked into his belt, giving the vibe of sort of priestly, sort of druidic, but like not quite. Like it kind of looks somewhat like a traveler, like a vagabond, but like also, you want him to you do want it to look like it was clothing that was made by Firbolgs and made by like a sort of like forest dwelling druidic. So I kind of got an idea for how I'm gonna do that, and I also don't think he needs like a ton of fur on him, just because same reason. Like I don't think it gets very cold in the Neverwinter Wood. I don't think he needs a ton. And again, there are mountains in the Neverwinter Wood, and if Sarek spent any time like wearing them, perhaps he did have some warmer clothes for that. Perhaps he kind of roughed it out a little bit. I don't know if we're gonna do any pen work tonight, to be honest. I'm like, cause it's not that I want to like, it's not that I want to cower in fear of the pens after what happened the other night. It's more so I'm really liking how this is working in pencil, and maybe we could go over it with pen another night so I could focus more and be less likely to rush. I love pen. I love even sketching in pen sometimes. And these Pigma microns are like my favorite. They're super nice, but I just haven't used these in so long. I really got into using these when I was in like college, and I was studying art, and I started like drawing some stuff on just for fun. I was like working on like making maps and stuff like that, and I love these. But it's been years since I've been using. I just have not used pens in so long. And so when I used them last night to try to like do a really cool like inked sort of outline on Callian, I rushed through it because it was getting late, and I kind of I didn't ruin it, but I definitely put a really cool pencil drawing into a kind of mid ink uh ink work. And I kind of was like, damn, I don't think the ink does this justice. I feel like for how good of a pencil sketch it was, it deserved a better ink. One of these days, I will get a better hanging method of my tapestry because my tapestry has fallen down every stream so far. Which I'm just starting out. This is like my third stream, so it's not a big deal. But I'll fix it soon. Would you ever draw a group portrait of the full party? Absolutely. We could even do that on stream, maybe, or we could work on it on stream. It'd probably take a while. Um, I've been streaming tonight for like an hour and a half, like a little longer than an hour and a half. But really, I didn't get started on the artwork. I've probably been drawing for like an hour and 15 minutes, probably. Um, and I think I'm drawing a little slower just because I'm getting used to like holding a conversation while I draw. Um, and I think like doing a full portrait of the party would take a while. I think it depends on like how detailed I would want it to be. Because I could do sort of less detail and like more so just like the broad strokes of the characters without really getting into the nitty gritty. Maybe like something that looks like it's from far away, or maybe like a smaller group portrait. But if I wanted to do like a full size group portrait with all of the characters, that'd be 5 characters. I definitely want to. I will, but I'm just saying maybe it would be too much for like a stream. Just because like I usually like the last few streams I've done have been like 3 hours each, and I feel like that's pretty normal for like a stream. It's like 2 to 3 hours. And I definitely couldn't do a full portrait of all the 5 characters in like 3 hours. Take me a lot longer than that. So maybe we could just do it in multiple parts. Probably take a few streams. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't have like a ton of followers at this point, so I don't think anyone really cares. But for me, I think it would like it keeps the streams like more interesting and novel if I do different stuff each stream. But I'll definitely do one though, like soon. But to be honest, I need to actually do need to finish my sketch of Gashard because like I did at least one sketch of all the characters, and Gashard I started it and I haven't finished it. And so I actually don't have like a finished piece for Gashard yet. And I think I want to do you know, a couple more renditions of each character before I do all of them together, just because I like for my own sake, I kind of want to get really comfortable with like all the characters. Like so I want to practice drawing them and then I'll do like a group portrait. I think that'd be really cool though. I think especially as like a party of adventurers, it'd be really cool to have like like a really cool image of like the entire party. He was here earlier. I think he said that he has the stream on and he's playing Phasmophobia. So I think he has it on, but he's like going back and forth. Like he's like in Phasmophobia and then he'll like hop back in and like listen to the stream for a few minutes. So and I know Noah said that he's probably gonna fall asleep just because it's late and also he has work, and so he normally goes to bed before this, but he wanted to like be here for at least part of the stream. He's a cool guy like that. Look at that. Looking nice. Looking nice. I like that. Although the pinky should be like not as wide as the ring finger. So I do too. He's a cool guy. I'm really enjoying streaming to be honest because like even like it doesn't even matter that I don't have like followers yet. It's just fun because one, it like gives me a cool sort of like motivation to like practice drawing. And like I'll stream other stuff too, like not just drawing, right? But like for now, since I'm doing drawing streams, like it's one really cool thing is that I get to practice drawing. And two, I get to talk about cool lore. Especially right now we were talking about like Sarek's backstory and stuff. And so it's another really cool excuse to sort of talk about like D&D lore or our campaign or like anything else. So it's very fun. Thank you, man. I appreciate the support. Um, all you guys have been the best, really. Because I know I've been talking about wanting to do this for so long, and I just never pulled the trigger. Not because I didn't want to, but just because it's kind of overwhelming to try to start something like that you've never done before like this. So it was kind of just like I didn't know where to start, basically. And then now that I'm finally trying it out and doing it, um, you guys have been so supportive and so great, and it makes it like genuinely so much like more fun and like easier to do just because like for the most part like I at least have someone who's here that I can talk to instead of just like trying to rough it out on my own, and it makes it a lot more fun. So all you guys have been really great, especially you and Noah and Jordan. I think Nick was in here earlier too. So all you guys have been great. I'm glad you like it. It's been really fun. I have more ideas too. I'm not just gonna do drawing streams, but it's really easy for me because like I can just sit down and like just decide like, hey, I'm gonna draw one of your guys' D&D characters, or maybe next time I stream, which might be tomorrow night, we'll see. Maybe I'll draw something else. Maybe I'll just be like, let's draw like some, I don't know, like let's draw some weapons, or like let's design like a castle, or let's like do a fantasy map. Let's start mapping out like like a region, right? We could do like some world building on the stream too, where like maybe we talk about like some ideas for like building a fantasy world, and then we like draw a map, or like we draw like some characters or like some equipment or something like that. And like, drawing could be a fun way to do some world building on, or like some character design, game design, all stuff that I'm very interested in. And then also breaking off into doing like mythology and history stuff too, because like I think it'd be really cool. I love Norse mythology and you know Celtic mythology and stuff. So maybe like talking about like some of the Norse gods and then like doing some of my own drawings of them would be really cool because you know like when it comes to like Odin and Thor and stuff, been around for so long and there's been so many different renditions of like artists drawing them, painting them and stuff. I think it'd be really cool to do my own rendition of like Thor or Odin or something, right? That was something that I was thinking about too. And then also, I mean, I have ideas for like the podcast too. So I definitely want to start the podcast soon. Um, Maybe we do some gaming streams as well. I think some gaming streams could be fun. I don't know if like would get like I think the drawing streams are more niche. I feel like everyone does gaming streams, so I feel like if I have a chance at like doing well, it's probably with the drawing streams. But then again, I think more people would choose to watch gaming, but there's so many people doing gaming. I don't know. Like it's kind of a wash. I guess like, but I'm down to try both. So maybe we try both and see like if one of them sticks more. But I don't think I'll stop doing here regardless. I think I'm gonna do keep doing the drawing stream. There you go. I might stop soon, to be honest. It's not that I'm not having fun, but I think Noah probably fell asleep, and Jesus looks like he's been gone for a while. I haven't seen I haven't seen Nick in here at all. Um, and it's been a good stream. It's been a great stream. But I would be down just to continue this drawing on my next stream. Maybe I'll just stream tomorrow, and I'll try to stream earlier tomorrow, maybe. And we could continue this on tomorrow's stream. Honestly, uh, do a rune writing stream where you talk about the history and mythology of. That'd be sick. I think I could definitely do that. I would definitely want to do a little homework, um, in preparation for that, but I can do it. Um, the runes, when it comes to, well, there's different types of runes, but like runes typically refer to Germanic writing systems. So like like if it's from like a non-Germanic language, then like even if it's a different type of symbol or like alphabet, it's not going to be rune, right? So like runes typically are letters and writing systems from like typically like Norse and Nordic, like Old Norse and Proto Norse and stuff like that. But then you also have like Anglo-Saxon runes, which are basically an offshoot of the probably would have been an offshoot of like the Elder Futhark, from like Proto Norse, because the Anglo-Saxons migrated to England before the Viking Age, and the runes of the Viking Age were the Younger Futhark. Um, So you got like the cool. I like the Anglo-Saxon runes, and people don't really talk about those as much because everyone, when you think runes, you think like Vikings, obviously. But the Anglo-Saxon runes are pretty cool and interesting. They're very similar, but they're also very different. Like there's some cool. Um, but when it comes to runes, though, um, there's a lot of discourse about runes online. To be honest, and like kind of like people saying that like oh, they have like these mystical qualities, and there's like they were used for magic, and like they have like a symbolic sort of like meaning to each rune besides just like the phonetic sound that they make. And then there's other people who just say, no, that's a load of nonsense. Runes are just letters. They don't have like a spiritual meaning. Like they don't have any sort of meaning beyond just like the sound that they make in the alphabet, right? um and there's a hotly contested debate online between those two like kind of schools of thought. So it'd be interesting to talk about. I personally don't have like the answer to that because I just am not like an expert on it, but I tend to believe that I definitely think that like the runes in period probably would have had like some spiritual sort of like use as well, just because like we know that like each of the runes for sure does have a unique name, right? So like I'm not gonna try to remember them now because I don't want to like say the name of one of them and then get it wrong and then have it be on. So I'll do more research, but like, it's not just like in English we use the Roman alphabet, right? And like the Roman alphabet, you just have like A. It's just A, right? It's just the letter A. It makes you know an ah sound or an ah sound depending on the word because English is wacky. But it doesn't have like a deeper meaning. But like in like the younger Futhark and the Elder Futhark, like each rune has an actual name, right? So like the rune, I think it's the one that is shaped like a bee. I think the name of it is like birch or something like it's like birch tree, but just the Norse word for it. Like I don't remember what it is. Don't quote me on that because it might not be birch for that one. But like the point is that like there's an actual name for it and it like represents something other than just the sound. But the names each start with the rune as the first letter. Right? Um, and so there's one that means like wealth, I think. But it's like the Norse word for wealth, and then it would start with the same letter as the word and the rune. And so I think that the fact that they chose to name the runes with words that started with those letters instead of just calling them the sound like we do in English, like the sound A is A because that's what sound it makes. Like we could call A apple, right? In English, like if we wanted to. Like if there was like a meaning behind it, but like we don't. We just say A. And that like so that would kind of be like how the runes like like they have like a word for each rune. And I think that in my opinion like is it leans me towards that. Yeah, they probably did have like some significance, like some sort of like significance beyond just like the phonetic sound that they make. um but that could be a cool topic because I could talk more about it, so maybe we could do something. Maybe I'll make a video on it. um what's the difference between Viking and Anglo-Saxon runes? Um, basically, like it's basically the difference between like related languages, kind of like if that makes sense. Like languages, like two languages that come from like a common like ancestor language, but like because of like geographical and cultural differences in two different places develop over time, the runes change just like a language changes. Like so um like English is a Germanic language because it comes from the Anglo-Saxons who migrated from northern Germany and like southern Denmark, right? That like area. And they were Germanic speaking peoples and they would have spoken at that time before they migrated um probably some form of like proto-Germanic or something like that. Because it was before the Viking Age, so it wouldn't have been Old Norse. It would have been like proto. It would have been like Old Germanic or like Proto-Germanic thing. And then you have the Anglo Saxons leaving northern Germany in the like the 5th century AD, I think. So like around the time of like the fall of the Roman Empire, the fall of the Western Roman Empire, and they migrated to England. But then the Anglo Saxons before the Vikings come and invade. They're there from like the 4th century to like the 8th century is when the Viking Age starts, right? So that's like 400 years of like disconnect where they're speaking this Germanic language in England, but then in northern Germany and southern Scandinavia, they're also speaking like a language that's derived from like the same ancestor language, like the same parent language, but it turns into something else. Like you have like Old Norse develop in Scandinavia uh, during the Viking Age, so like the 8th century to like the 11th century. And then you also have like in Germany, like it would have been like Old German or something like Low German that would have developed, right? And so the runes had a similar phenomenon, right? So like you have like Proto-Germanic, I think, is where the Elder Futhark, which is like the original first runes that we have recording of, would have been used. And like the oldest runes that we have evidence for, I believe, like it just got pushed back because they like recently, like last year, I think, found evidence that pushes back the timeline. Like they found something that was even older. I want to say it's around like the first century AD now, or it might even be the first century BC. So the Elder Futhark is like very old. It's like 2,000 years old basically. And so that would have been like Proto-Germanic, right? And then you have these northern Germanic people in like northern Europe using these runes to represent their language for a long time. But then as the people move, like you have like people moving from Germany into England, for example, they take their runes with them, but as their language is changing, their runes change over time as well. So like the Anglo-Saxon runes and the younger Futhark are both derived from the elder Futhark, I believe, but they develop differently. Just like the languages develop different. And so the main difference is just you have some of the most notable differences that you can like notice easily, I think, just looking at them is that the Anglo-Saxon runes, like runic alphabet, has runes like letters that don't exist in like the Viking runes of like the younger Futhark, and vice versa. I don't know vice versa actually. I think maybe one of them just has more runes. I think the Anglo-Saxon one just has more because the Anglo-Saxon runes have letters that don't exist. I think some of the other the tapestry falling down. That's all right. Um, and the sounds that certain runes make also shift over time, just like how sounds that letters make in English have shifted over time as well. So it's very similar to like how language changes over time. And it's just because like the slow like ever like very very slow like process of like little things in the language changing like decade by decade or century by century, and eventually they so much time has gone by that like what was once a very small change like develops into a big one. um so like vowels slightly shift, right? So we see that in most languages, I think, is that the sounds that vowels make change over time just because of like the way that people talk, because of like accents changing, right? Because if a people move to a different geographic location and they're speaking a language that they brought with them, but then they're interacting with a different people, like that's now close to them, and they're talking to them a bunch, their accent might change a little bit because they're interacting with different people. So then the vowel sounds might change, or like even the consonants change as well, like over time. Because like the actual physical way they talk changes, and sometimes in certain languages, like that change can be very abrupt, or it's usually over like a long period of time. But typically, like it's interesting because sometimes like the written language. Yeah. I've watched that video before. Rob Words is pretty good. Um, but yeah, I think the thing is, right, if you have a bunch of people and their accent changes or the way they talk changes because of like intermingling or interacting with different people who speak a different language or have a different, way of talking or whatever. Sometimes you have like the written language like doesn't change, but now the spoken language changes, so like the characters on the page now represent different sounds because you have it written one way and it used to be pronounced this way, but now people are talking different and they're just using the same letters, so now the letters mean something different, which is really interesting, right? And it's like little things like that, but like over centuries it changes them. So um yeah, the runes are cool. I think those are the main three sets of runes: the Anglo-Saxon runes, the Elder Futhark, and the Younger Futhark. I think those are, to my knowledge, like the main. There could be like slight offshoots, but I think those are like the main ones for runes. And then you got like fantasy runes, right? Like everyone in their fantasy world makes runes or like just steals runes, right? Like J.R. Tolkien famously used the Anglo-Saxon runes as the dwarvish runes, so like in The Hobbit. Yeah, but I'm gonna put it out now. Um, but yeah, I mean, these runes here, those are Anglo-Saxon runes. Like one example, I think is the rune that is similar to like the English O. This one is, I believe, different than how that would look in other runes. Like I don't think that particular one is in like Elder Futhark or the ones. But but runes are fascinating, man. Like because I think because they come from like Vikings and like Anglo-Saxon from like the early Middle Ages and stuff like that. I think it's like it works with fantasy so well because it comes from like a that sort of time and place that like evokes like a very like traditional fantasy feel. But I also just think that the fact that they're different and like they're alien to us as modern English speakers, but still familiar in a weird way and like super cool looking. I think it makes sense why they are so prevalent in fantasy. So, like honestly, a video about like runes and like what they mean historically, but also like why they're so significant in fantasy could be a really cool idea for a video. I'll have to make. I think coming up with a custom set of runes or a custom alphabet for a fantasy world would be really fun as well. I think I like that could be something that perhaps we do on the channel, or perhaps I could do for my own fantasy world. It'd be pretty sweet. All right, well, I haven't been drawing for the last like 20 minutes or so because I've got distracted and I got sidetracked. But I don't want to pick it back up right now just because since it is late and since I have taken such a long break from it, I think it'd be better just to pick it back up next stream. But it's looking really good. I just want to get a close up face. No, you're good. No, yeah, we can talk more. I'm probably gonna stop drawing now, but we can definitely talk more for a little while. But yeah, I like the progress we made today, and we had a good stream. We had some new people come in, some new faces in the chat, so that was great. We had some good conversations, some great conversations. And honestly, this Sarek is looking really, really good. Just like the shape of the body and like and the detail I got in the face is coming out really, really nice. Um, and I'm kind of like out of my flow state right now, which is fine. So, but I was in my flow state earlier. I was hitting that flow, and I don't want to do so like I don't want to make a mistake like I made the other night because I was doing so well with Callian but I was like getting towards the end of the stream, and I was like, oh, I want to ink this, but I kind of tried to do it quick, and then I didn't like the ink job that I did on it. So I don't want to like recreate that situation. So we'll chill for a few more minutes. But to answer your question, did people have family runes like people today have family crests? No, I don't think so. Not to my knowledge. Like family crests, I think probably I think most things that we associate with like the high Middle Ages had some sort of like DNA in like ancient Rome, because essentially like you had the fall of the Western Roman Empire in like 5th century AD, I think. And then you had like the early medieval period, which a lot of people call like the Dark Ages. And then it's not until like the high Middle Ages and the late Middle Ages that like you get like a lot of those like knights in shining armor kind of like stereotypes and stuff. And a lot of that sort of like a lot of the DNA of like the high Middle Ages when it knights and like the codes of chivalry and all that, like a lot of it comes from like traditions from like ancient Rome. Like they were trying to like recreate like the glory of like the Roman Empire because it was so prevalent in Europe. So like kings and like emperors and stuff during the Middle Ages would use uh anything that they could claim that was like Roman would be like clout basically. It would be like a good way of like trying to show their legitimacy. And I feel like I would have to do more research, but I think like family crests like they might have like some sort of like origin in like Rome. But otherwise, I don't think they show up until like the high Middle Ages. So not like the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings is like too early. Like you wouldn't really have like Vikings with like coats of arms. And you also like wouldn't have like Anglo-Saxons with like coats of arms. As far as I'm aware, right? I could be missing something, but you don't really have that too much. But what you did have, like the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings and like the early like Germanic peoples just as a whole didn't really write a lot down. Like didn't really like put a whole lot of emphasis on like written language. So a lot of their histories and stuff like that was oral, and that was perfectly fine for them. And so they didn't have like a whole lot of records or anything really written down. Um and that's why like that's why like they kind of like used the runes, because like runes weren't really great for like writing like long paragraphs and like very detailed speech. Like runes typically were used in like more short and like descriptive ways. Um like I think a lot of like the actual carvings of runes that we find are like, you know, Krogi made this ring or like, you know, like the Ulfberth sword, which is like famous. There was like a famous blacksmith who like engraved his name in runes on like a bunch of swords, right? Um, but it wasn't really used, like runes weren't typically used in like long form like prose and stuff like that. Like all of like the poetry of the time was just like committed to memory and like oral history. Um, but you did have these things called bind runes, which I again it's kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where there's like kind of like people arguing about it online, whether like bind runes were like important or whether they're real at all, or whether it's a bunch of nonsense, modern reconstructions and stuff. Because what a bind rune essentially is you have multiple runes and you combine them, you bind them into one big rune. Um, and because runes almost all have like a straight line, like somewhere. Not all of them, but a lot of them have like a straight line. So you could connect like one rune on this side and then another rune on the other side, and then you could like put like if there's like one that looks like a diamond or something, you could put that like in the middle or like on the top, and so you could combine runes into like a bind rune. And the idea that a lot of people perpetuate is that bind runes were used in like magic and like spells because there's a lot in like the sagas. There's a lot of accounts of like witches using like magic stuff like that. So like in the Norse mythology in general, there's like a decent amount of like spells and stuff like that. Like Seidr is like a type of magic. Um, and so a lot of people say that like, oh yeah, like that's how you craft a spell is by like making a binder. Or some people say that like you would make a bind rune and then you would carve it on like a post or like a tree or like a marker, and that would like protect this region or this area, right? I think you see something similar in like God of War actually. Like I remember playing God of War 4. I think there's or it might have been Ragnarok. But you're going through like a forest and like you find like a bind rune like on like a post that like denotes like this is the area, but it's like slashed and it's destroyed, so now the protection is gone. um and runes are also in the sagas and stuff like that, um used for like divination, right? Because like Odin gives up his eye, or no, I think, oh, so Odin, he learns the secrets of runes, and I can't remember which sacrifice it was, but I think it might have been, so he hung in a tree for 9 days and nine. I think that was how he learned the rune. Either it was either that or losing his eye, because he learned the runes from something, and then he gained like foresight from something. I think I can't remember which one it was, but anyway, um, so like bind runes could be like sort of like something that represents something, but like people didn't really use it as like a family crest or like to denote themselves or anything like that. Everything was mostly like oral tradition and stuff. But I just thought bind runes were kind of interesting, and that's a whole nother conversation because I again would have to do more research on bind runes. Like to, I don't even know if they're technically real or not. Um, or like how many examples that we actually have from like archaeology and stuff. Yeah, unfortunately, like runes just like weren't really used all that often, to be honest. They were just kind of used for like kind of like denoting ownership mostly over like items and like things that were crafted. Um, although there was a more recent finding that well, it might not have been super recent, but there was a video that I saw that was more recent talking about, oh, maybe runes were used more frequently than we actually thought because we found a bunch of rune carvings on pieces of wood that were supposedly in like a tavern that was burned down. Um, in like a big city in like Norway. I think it was like even Oslo or something. It was like, yeah, like a Viking era or like early medieval era like tavern or in like a bunch of buildings in this old town district that all burned down, and then they found runes, and like one of them was talking about how like this guy, I don't remember his name, like Hrolf or something, was asked to leave because he was too drunk or something. And then you had a reply. He carved his own runes into like a piece of wood and it was like unintelligible. And so they were actually conversing in runes, and it was like literally a drunk text, but like him trying to carve runes, which is super funny. Um so they could have been used more, maybe towards like the end of the Viking Age. I'm not sure. But yeah, they didn't really people didn't really use them like to represent themselves. I could talk about this shit for forever. All right. Well, it's been a great stream. I'm excited to pick up this drawing again next stream. Um, I think I'll probably take the day off from door dashing tomorrow. so that way I can work on some stuff for the channel. Because I want to figure out, I want to get some music definitely for the streams. But I need to take some time to like find some royalty free, copyright free music that sounds good and isn't annoying. And then in the meantime, I might do some more research on some of these topics so we can talk about them more. And I think I'll probably hop on and finish this drawing tomorrow. But anyway, thanks everyone for stopping in. I had a fun time tonight. Hope everyone else had a like relaxing and or fun time in the stream tonight. And I will see you guys very soon. I don't have a schedule for streaming quite yet. I'm still working out schedule is going to be for streaming. I'm going to try to do it fairly frequently. Not every night, but like multiple times a week for sure. And then hopefully I'll have the first video on the channel out fairly soon. Um, Again, not quite sure when that's coming, but it'll be coming sooner than later. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope everyone had a good time. I hope the conversation and maybe the drawing itself inspired you guys to create something, to go make something cool, or to learn something, to practice a skill. Like I'm practicing my drawing skills, trying to get better. But yeah, go write something, go draw something, go create something. And tune back in to the channel for more content like this and just to hang out and talk about stuff. Good night, everyone, and peace out.